also the chair and treasurer for the CF Corp. I've lived here in Fort Nelson for something in the neighborhood of about 50 years. I've spent most of my adult life in the forest industry, more on the manufacturing side of things, mostly converting things from round to flat to square. I am delighted to be part of the CFA and working with the board for the, obviously for the betterment of Fort Nelson and to improve the economy and things like that. So what I'd like to do now is I'll introduce the board to you. We'll start off with Catherine. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi there, I'm Catherine Wolfenden. In my day job, I sit as the Land and Resource Coordinator at Fort Nelson First Nation, the Lands Office. In this role, I am on the Board of Directors for Fort Nelson First Nation. I've been in the community going on 10 years now. And I generally work in wildlife and restoration work.
And Catherine is also the vice chair of the CFA. Go ahead, Jim.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. As Lauren said, my name is Jim Snetzinger, and I am a director of the CFA nominated by the FNFN. I'm a registered professional forester. I have about 31 years experience working for the provincial government, and I retired in 2012, and then I joined Industrial Forestry Service, a consulting firm out of Prince George, and I work with them as a senior associate. And for the past 4 years, I've been helping and working with the FNFN on some of their forest sector related objectives and aspirations. And one of those has been this joint collaboration with the NRRM on a community forest, which has come to fruition. And it's a very exciting project to be involved with. So I look forward to talking to you more about it as the evening progresses.
Thanks, Jim. We also have another board of director. He is going to be late about 15 minutes or so. His name is Jeff Beal. He resides in Fort St. John. He is no stranger to the forest industry. He's a registered professional forester. He has worked up in Fort Nelson area, and he has a wealth of knowledge in the forest sector. So I'm sure we will get him to say some words of wisdom when he joins us. So having said that, we will move on. Sharon, you got the change our slide here, please. Go ahead, Catherine, please.
All right. Thanks. So I'll just talk about a bit of the background about the CFA. Just looking at some of the names that are joining us tonight, I feel like a lot of you have been to our open houses that we hosted back more in the beginning stages. So it's been 4 years now that both of the parties, the NRM and FNFN, have been working together to kind of start the CFA and get it to where it's at. And really what it came down to was both of the parties wanted to see that local control of the timber supply and wanted to see and make sure that the timber resources in the Fort Nelson TSA were being utilized for the community. We wanted to make sure that there was some oversight and really to see what we could offer for some local employment opportunities given kind of the economic state in Fort Nelson. So it's been 4 years of a lot of work. Next slide. And obviously, you know, we know the resources there, we know it's high quality, and really we just want to make sure that we're going to get the value added and it's going to be worthwhile for the community, and hopefully in the process get some good opportunities for local contractors and kind of keep working on our way with the CFA, developing it, getting it to operating state here, hopefully in the near future. Next.
Thank you very much. Next slide, Sharon, please. So we'll have Jim talk about the area map and the fiber supply.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence. And hopefully I'm not going to be slurring my words too much this evening. I had a tooth pulled earlier today, this afternoon, and the freezing's just starting to come out. So I haven't had happy hour here. It's the freezing that's in my mouth. So in any case, the map, everybody can see the map that we have up in front of us. And a considerable amount of effort went into identifying the areas for the CFA. And we did this over the course of approximately about a year and a half. And we've shown this map to the community and community forums or in the past, but thought we'd put this up and show you the polygons that make up the CFA, and those are identified in the green areas. It is the largest CFA in the province. It's around 200,000 hectares. The timber harvesting land base of the CFA is around 85,000 hectares, so it's considerable area. It's all within a 100-kilometer radius of Fort Nelson. There was one area that we were proposing to have in the CFA, which was down near the Prophet River First Nations territory, and that area was taken out in order to avoid any potential conflicts. So we're in the process now of discussions with the ministry of adding back about 16,000 hectares of Crown land into the CFA, and we'll get that process finalized sometime in the next 12 months. But this map does represent the current boundaries as a CFA as they currently exist. Let's go on to the next slide. In terms of fiber supply, as I said, it's a large piece of ground. It has a significant AAC. The total AAC for the CFA is 217,650 cubic meters per year. And of course, given the mixed nature of the forests up in the Fort Nelson TSA, this has a coniferous component and a deciduous component. And the coniferous volume that we're allowed to harvest off the CFA on an annual basis amounts to 118,000 cubic meters a year, while the deciduous volume is 650 cubic meters per year. Nested within that 217,650 cubic meter AAC is a volume reservation for BC timber sales to the amount of 32,650 cubic meters per year. And this is to recognize the amount of area that the CFA encumbered of the BCTS pricing area. So there was some land that made sense to put into the CFA from the BCTS pricing unit area, and as a result, our CFA does have a volume reservation of 32,650 cubic meters for BCTS. And we'll be working closely with BCTS to make sure that that volume is integrated in a way that makes sense for the CFA and is consistent with the management plan objectives for the CFA. Next slide. So I have the next couple of slides as well. And this first one, I wanted to give you just a sense of what we've actually achieved in the last 9 to 10 months since we've been formed as a board of directors. So we did have the directors identified for the CF Corp by the partners. And we had I think we've had one face-to-face meeting before the pandemic hit, and that was I think sometime in late January, early February. And of course, one of the things that we needed to do, we needed to get our license finalized with the ministry. And one of the things that we were grappling with at the time, given the state of the forest industry, was just how we were going to deal with the effective date of the license. And the reason we were grappling with that is because as soon as you sign a license with the ministry, annual rent becomes due and payable. And the annual rent is 37 cents a cubic meter per annum, which amounts to a little over $68,000 a year. And given that there wasn't any market at the time for the timber, either locally or anywhere else at that particular point, we negotiated with the ministry to have the CFA approved and issued, but with an effective date of April the 1st, 2020, which would mean we could put off paying the annual rent for one full calendar year, which saved us a lot of money. Now we could have that effective date brought up if for some reason there was a need to harvest timber sooner rather than later. But at this particular time, it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case. We also developed an operating budget for the CFA, and the two partners provided the operating budget for 2020. We've secured bookkeeping and administrative services. A local person in Fort Nelson, Sharon Landry, has agreed to provide those services on a contract basis to the CFA. We've obtained a corporate email and a box office address. We're working on our governance processes, and as Lawrence said, he is the president and or the chair and the treasurer, with Catherine being the vice chair. And over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be developing other elements of our corporate governance framework, whether that's procurement policy, contracting policy, just anything else we think we need to run CF Corporation efficiently. And doing all that will be guided by the vision, mission, and goals and guiding principles that we have developed for the Fort Nelson CFA. And the last point I wanted to make was that we're going to be looking at what we think is the most operational or most appropriate operational management approach for the CFA, as well as identifying the potential local interest for fiber from the CFA. And many of you will probably have seen an ad we placed in the local paper that ran the previous Wednesday, and I think the previous 2 Wednesdays. So we're looking for expressions of interest from local entrepreneurs, local manufacturers that might be interested in procuring either coniferous or deciduous fiber from the CFA, and looking for those written submissions to be submitted to the board. And we would then review those and then enter into more detailed discussions with those proponents on how much and when and where and all kinds of things like that going forward. So that's our first step with respect to getting operations going. Next slide.
Yep.
In terms of the financial information, as everybody knows, the past 9 to 12 months has been very difficult, not only for the forest sector, but for everybody globally with the pandemic. And those implications have also been felt by the community forest and the board members. And while the board was legally formed in 2019, we didn't, or the corporation was formed in 2019, the board hadn't been formed and we hadn't made any expenditures, so we didn't have any finances to be audited for 2019. However, as I mentioned, both the partners have contributed to the 2020 CF Corporation, and as a result, we will get our 2020 financial information audited, and the next time we have a community update, we'll be able to present audited financial information for all the public to see in a very open and transparent way. I am pleased to say that the CF Corp and the board will be on track to meet our 2020 budget that has been allocated to us in our operating budget. So more to come on financials in future updates.
Thank you very much, Jim, for that. Next slide there. So I'll talk about the 2021 next steps, and I'll go on the short trails of what Jim has been talking about when we talk about identifying local demand opportunities. That will be a continuation. We're hoping that we could, all the expression of interest will be in by, I think it is January 6th, so that'll be in the new year. and we're looking forward to identifying that demand and working with local entrepreneurs or whatever in some discussions about potential manufacturing facilities or the use of that fiber. In terms of the governance framework, we are working on that. That is going to be ongoing. That is getting the structure and how we actually see all that working and roles and responsibilities and the direction that we want to go. And it will help guide us making good decisions for both communities. So that is a key one that is going to take a lot of work for that. As Jim spoke, developing the direction and the management of the CFA operations, we gotta get our heads around how we best want to manage that piece, and whether that is go with a manager or how we're going to operate that. Us as a board will make that decision, and I'm not sure when that'll be, but in the meantime, the four of us or the four directors will be managing that piece, and we'll make the good decision on that one. We have, I believe, we need to have a financial audit done for 2020, and I believe that we've made a decision or very close to doing that. So we have to have that done this year. So that'll be one of the steps that we are going to do going into the new year. We've talked about a CFA web page. That will come, I guess, over time. I guess you got to walk before you run, I guess, and that is going to take some work on all of our part. And then we talk about the continuous business improvement, and that is continually improving on the business and doing the things that we need to do in order to streamline and make the CFA and the board all work and very efficiently and do the best we can. So them are what I see or we see as a board of the next steps going forward for 2021. And obviously, as everybody knows, this pace is going very quickly. And last year, I believe in January, or as Jim says, it's been anything but normal. And if someone would have said that we're going to be where we are today, with a potential company coming in and doing some activities in the forest sector or the forest industry in I guess in general terms, be as active and that there where we thought we would have never imagined that we would have all lost money. So we've got a busy year. I think we've got some huge opportunities here to going forward. And I think we don't have all the answers, but we certainly are moving in the right direction, and we have lots of discussions, and we make sure that we want the right deal for both communities. So I would like to thank everybody for their work on the presentation. I would say we'll open that up for questions and some answers. So is everybody good with that? Or? So Sharon, do we have any written answers or questions to me?
There's been one question. What sort of employment opportunities are there for us?
Well, I think the local employment opportunities, if there is a local demand here, there is job opportunities, and perhaps in the manufacturing process of that. There quite likely would be some log hauling. There would be harvesting. There could be road building. There could be all kinds of opportunities there for local employment. And so, I mean, these are very early days. But as Catherine said, the whole thing with the community forest here is to try to create as much employment and benefits for both communities. So there will be opportunities for local employment. There's just no question about it. And along with that comes spin-offs. So if we can process or manufacturing some fiber, even the spin-off jobs from that, the tire shops, the hotels, grocery stores, everything starts to develop and get busier and busier. So there's lots of opportunity for everybody here in the community, in both communities actually. What else we got here?
Where can I find a map that overlays with trap line boundaries?
If you, I don't know who asked that question, but if you want to just send Sharon your email, I can get a map made up and then we can email that off to you.
Another question is, has FN, and NRRM looked at maybe doing a cooperative mill, i.e. dimensional mill, to utilize the fiber in the area?
Well, I mean, I think I can speak to that. I think at this point we are in the business of selling fiber, as opposed to looking at setting up a facility or going into on a joint venture or something like that to build a facility. I don't think that was. We have not had any discussions, and I don't think that that's the direction at this point. I'm not saying that they couldn't look at that later, but our mandate is we have a fiber basket that we want to sell the fiber to. I think that would be the first thing. There are a couple facilities here. Trans-North Timber is one of them, and there's other entrepreneurs here that have some milling capacity or capabilities. And I think what we would try to do is we would work with them to utilize that fiber source, and then we would go from there. I just don't see us entering into that at this point, for sure. I mean, Jim, you may want to add to that, but I just don't actually.
Yeah, I think you've answered it appropriately, Lawrence. The only other thing I could say is, you know, I think there's probably people out there in the community of Fort Nelson that probably, well, they do have experience in milling, you know, both the deciduous and the coniferous timber up. So they're probably much better positioned to be doing something on the manufacturing side than the Community Forest Corporation would be at this particular point. However, never say never. But at this particular point, I think our focus, Lawrence, will be to try and get the community forest up and running, and trying to fulfill whatever local demand there is with the fiber from the CFA. Yeah,
I agree with that for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is, what size of industries are sustainable with 118,000 cubic meters or so?
Do you want me to try and answer that, Lawrence?
Yeah, would you please?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a number of things that could happen with that amount of fiber. I mean, but you know, a large dimension sawmill, like you see in some other parts of of British Columbia, the interior British Columbia, that certainly isn't something that's viable with a 118,000 cubic meter cut of coniferous volume. However, somebody who was more had a focus on some other kind of product line, or somebody that wasn't in direct competition with the large dimension lumber mills in British Columbia, could do something with that fiber. There could be spin-offs on log home building, all kinds of different things that you could do with that fiber. And don't forget that this CFA is one component of the total fiber basket within the Fort Nelson, the larger Fort Nelson timber supply area. So it only represents, you know, less than 10% of the total fiber that's available within the Fort Nelson timber supply area.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. I would like to add just a little bit onto that. I mean, we have had local manufacturers here that have been here for many years and have been successful. If they have access to fiber, I know that they have the talent and could make quite a nice living and create some good jobs and good employment for local people here. And as Jim says, there is more fiber available other than the CFA. So I agree with that statement. Okay, sure.
Another question is, Kim wants clarification just to make sure she heard you right. You said if there is a fiber demand here, the jobs opportunities would be.
Well, I mean, if the local demand, if there's a user for that fiber in the community here, they're going to need people to help through that process. So there would be jobs. I don't know the number of jobs that it would take to utilize some of the fiber. I think local entrepreneurs or manufacturers would have some sort of a business plan, and that would include harvesting and all that kind of thing. It would include yard workers, milling, the whole work. So I mean, there are a number of opportunities there. I guess the first part is get the fiber, get that into the mill, and that will dictate the amount of employment that would create from that fiber source. So I don't know if that helps, but I mean, at this point, I don't know what each mill or each manufacturing facility would employ a certain amount of people. So I just don't know what that number is, but there would be opportunities there for sure. In all that, that's including harvesting and logging trucks, road building, maintenance, road maintenance. It's just unlimited.
But only if it was based on the fact that what you had said was only if there's a local demand for it.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if there isn't a local demand for it, I think we got to be clear about this, is that our priority, or the first priority, is to sell that fiber locally to those that can manufacture and create local jobs. That's first and foremost. However, if there is no local demand, I mean, CF Corp will be looking for opportunities to sell fiber outside Fort Nelson.
Okay, thank you.
We just will be.
Okay, the next question was this venture always designed to be a profit corporation? If so, how was that arrived in negotiations with the 3 levels of government becoming a free enterprise corporation? And Abigail might need to explain herself a little further if she'd like to.
Sure. I was just a participant at the Peak Renewables information session that was put on by the Chamber of Commerce, and in that meeting, Mayor Foster mentioned, and I'd like clarification if I've misunderstood this because it wasn't, it kind of came and went, and I haven't seen it since. But I believe he said that because of the nature of the Northern Rockies, as a government body, they were prevented from being a business partner. And so now what we seem to have is a business run by government across the board. There's no independence here. So I'm just wondering, is that a common, does this constitute something like a crown corporation that is run by governments for private people? I'm just, this is kind of a brand new format for free enterprise as far as I can see. I'm just kind of curious to know how all of that was resolved.
Lawrence, maybe I can take a stab at that answer if you like.
You're going to have to.
Okay. Well, it's a good question.
It is a good
because
question.
it's a very good question because it's not intuitively obvious how all this kind of works.
No.
So community forests have been around in British Columbia since, well, probably almost 20 years. I think I was involved in one of the first ones that got awarded, and was the Burns Lake Community Forest. And the people that can become involved in community forests is set out under the Forest Act and the Community Forest Regulation. And so there's legal requirements, but you can award a community forest to a community enterprise like the Village of Burns Lake or the Village of Vanderhoof, or they can be or it can go to a First Nation, or it can be partners between communities and First Nations. And what's happened in this particular instance is two partners have come together, and the government was very happy to see the NRM and the FNFN come together in a partnership to apply for a community forest. And they formed their own legal entities, or those legal entities formed a legal partnership, and that partnership holds the license, and the CF Corp is a legal entity as a general partner between those two limited partners, and we manage that those operations on behalf of the two partners at arm's length from the two partners. So the CF Corp carries out the day-to-day business of the CF Corporation, and if there are any profits generated from the operation of the CFA, we will work with the partners to see how those profits are dispersed between the communities. Does that answer the question?
Abigail?
Yes, for the moment.
Okay.
Okay, next question is from Ben. Have you discussed what volume and how long-term supply agreements you would consider entering into?
Well, I can answer this, I guess. I think we haven't talked about, we would want to have a agreement with users of that fiber. I think in general terms, we would want to put some sort of a time frame on it with review on a regular basis. You know, for someone to come in and want a fiber supply agreement, and you know, 5 years goes by pretty quick, or you know, it certainly can. And we recognize that going out to try to get some finances for that, the longer term of some sort of an agreement is better. But we also want to make sure that is reviewed, because if it's not working, then we have to adjust it and everything else. So I guess the short answer is, yeah, we're prepared to look at long-term agreements, but there would have to be some other things in there that we could say, okay, how are things going, and we can adjust as time goes on. So we understand, I think, in principle, that you got to have a bit of leeway. You got to have some time to get things worked out, and then go farther, because it may not work for both of you neither. So I guess the long and the short of it is a little bit longer time. We understand, and that's quite doable.
Okay, Jeff Thompson would like to know, does this mean you would ship raw logs out if there's no local demand? Well,
I mean, at the end of the day, we're running this as a business. I will be as bold to say is that I don't think we're prepared to sit onto that fiber and pay that annual rent. As Jim says, as soon as we initiate that forest license, we are going to pay annual rent. There are going to be costs associated with it. Both communities recognize that. I mean, I think that was the whole idea of this community forest. I don't think it's a question whether or not there's a demand here. I think we know that there is a potential here for local manufacturing. What that looks like in the volumes, I don't know. But our position is that we are going to, our first priority is to offer for local manufacturing. And if that demand is not there, then we will look at going elsewhere out of the region. We just will. So if that means shipment south, I mean, no one wants to see fiber rolling down the road, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's the reality of it. Next question. And I don't know if I answered that right, but I think I did. Maybe Jim wants
There
to
are
make,
actually,
pardon?
there's no more further questions right now.
Okay, so Jim, maybe you want to pick up a little bit on that on the short tails of my comment about that. It's a topic, and I understand.
Yeah, it's obviously a dilemma, and it's a tough piece for the CF Corp to deal with and the board of directors to deal with. But you know, a couple of points. We're in very early days. We want to see what the local demand is currently, and we want to see what we can do to meet that local demand. And then there's, you know, people have to think about the mixed nature of the forests up in Fort Nelson. A lot of the stands don't come in either a pure conifer state or a pure deciduous state. There are some of those, but for the most part, it's a pretty mixed forest with conifer and deciduous in many of the stands. So if we're harvesting and we have a local market, so for instance, if a local market develops for the deciduous fiber, such as what Peak Resources is considering, and we have an outlet for the deciduous fiber, which has always been a tough nut to crack in the Fort Nelson TSA, unless there's something like an OSB plant or a pellet plant working. Then you know, if there isn't an outlet for the deciduous fiber, we're probably not going to be doing much harvesting because of the mixed nature of the forest. But if there is an outlet for it, and there's a home for the deciduous fiber, then we have to figure out what to do with the bycatch of the conifer that's in some of those stands. And we're hoping that that bycatch can go to the local manufacturers in Fort Nelson, and that somebody will come up with some really good ideas on what they want to do with that fiber. And they can tell us how much they might need, what they're going to do with it, how many jobs they might create. And in further discussions, they might be willing to share with us what they're willing to pay for it. And then we can start to talk terms and conditions for providing fiber. But at this particular stage, as Lawrence says, our first priority is to meet that local demand as much as we can, and do it in a way that provides you know, some of the business certainty that people will need. But at the same time, I think we haven't had a lot of discussion about this, but I think somehow the board of directors has to wrap their heads around how do you meet that local demand that may now exist or may start to appear, and then start to think about the flexibility to meet future demands or future ideas that entrepreneurs have. So, you know, will we want to wrap up that whole 100,000 cubic meters a year of conifer right off the bat? I don't know. We'll have to see what proposals come into the CF Corp with our initial exploration for interest in our fiber.
Okay.
Yeah,
We have another question.
before we move to another question there, I just wanted to, Catherine is, you know, when she started there, this whole idea, and she's been at it a lot longer, and I have been involved with the community, of course, but you know, she's mentioned and a number of times that, you know, when this CFA was put together, there was a lot of thought to go into about local processing and the benefits to both communities. So I think, you know, the priority is to seek out local demand first and then go from there. So, okay, Sharon.
Okay, the question or a statement, I'm not really sure. Abigail Neville, am I correct in hearing you say you feel pressure to sell the resource? This being said, this is beginning, to sound like the principals in the community stand to gain in this, where the locals could gain not much without local manufacturing clause.
No, we're the principals in the company.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think the CFA has been under any pressure I think we've been going slow, as Jim says, that, you know, we put that license in suspension. We could have started it earlier. We can initiate that licensing on April 1st, 2021. We want to make sure that where we're going, that we get it right. We want to make sure that what the benefits are for both communities. We want to make sure that we get the right deal. That's very, very important. We are not just holder. No, we're not under the gun, and we're not pressured to cut a deal. I just want to clear that up. This whole community forest is for the benefit of the community. That's first and foremost, and that remains the top priority. And we are not under pressure. I just want to assure everybody of that. We've put a request for expression of interest out there to see if people want to. There's some fiber there. What are their needs? What does it look like there? And we're doing that, and we will remain diligent, and we will make sure that we get the right deal, and it's the best for the community.
Lawrence, I just wanted to maybe clarify a little bit. It's hard to get everything into a little text box, but I didn't really mean pressure from outside, but I did hear pressure from within because of the annual fee that's due to the provincial government. What I've heard, I think it was James who mentioned that there is a sense that you have to sell in order to at least cover the costs of your licensing and presumably the cost of the operations of the corporation. So that's where I really meant pressure. I don't mean to sell to any specific outside customer, but from your own perspective. What I had originally written was, would you be comfortable as a corporation not selling at all until a local manufacturing and need for the supply was found?
Well, I if Jim can clarify, what he talked about the rent, he can certainly do that. I will say that I'm not sure. That is a very tough question to say. You sit on a fiber basket, and you're waiting for someone to come to Fort Nelson, and that very well could happen. I think in general terms, I think we have probably one of the finest fiber baskets on the planet is right here in Fort Nelson in our region. We just do. The CFA has some very nice fiber, both deciduous and coniferous. Them areas were chosen very carefully, and they were for specific reasons, close to the community, good access. There was a number of things there to help attract potential users of that fiber. We know that we have manufacturing facilities here for that. I would also think that this is evolving all the time. I'm sure that the stumpage rates and things are going to be adjusted as time goes on, and things in the region are going to open up. I think we're going to start seeing investors come here willing to do something with some fiber. A part of the CFA fiber with maybe added from other areas in the region, I'm not sure, but we are sitting in a very good position. I honestly believe, and I think the board believes that we have a lot to offer. I don't think we have to worry about supplying for local demand. I just don't. I've lived here for many, many years. I know most of the players. I know most of all people, including you, Abigail. So I think in general, we want to make sure that we get the right deal and the best deal for both communities. I don't think we're going to have to sit on the license and not worry about fiber being utilized in Fort Nelson. I just don't see that. That doesn't actually answer your question about, well, are you prepared to sit on your license? I don't think we have to, and I'm not so sure we are prepared to do that, to be honest with you.
It does beg the question, when you talk about both communities, because of the nature of this corporation, what it sounds like we're talking about now is the benefit to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality and the benefit to the Fort Nelson First Nation body, not necessarily the members of either of those under those governing bodies. So when you say for the benefit of both,
When I say, pardon me, when I say both parties, I mean the people in the community. This is a community. When I talk about communities, I'm talking about the people in Fort Nelson and the Fort Nelson region. I'm talking about people in Fort Nelson, and I'm talking about on both sides of the river. All people will benefit from the forest and the manufacturing, local manufacturing. There is jobs. This is good for Fort Nelson.
absolutely, local. There's absolutely no contention about
And
doing something in terms of a live manufacture or a local manufacturing facility. That's a point. But my question is, if all of this is, in the worst possible case scenario, if all of this is a brokerage license occupied by the Northern Rockies and the First Nation to harvest logs that ship south, the actual benefit for the people proper becomes more obscure. And so I'm wondering if there's potential to add into the legislation of the corporation that will mitigate any of those unforeseen difficulties, let's say.
Lawrence, maybe I could take a crack at this for a second.
yeah, you can.
I think you've done an admirable job answering the question, but it's a difficult, tough question because it's a little bit of what might the future hold. And of course, we don't know what the future will hold, but the future is starting to look better now than it did 12 months ago, which is a good thing. Abigail, I just wanted to make 2 points. One, in our guiding principles for the CFA, one of our guiding principles related to what we've been talking about here is, I'll just read it. Respect for the belief that timber harvested in the CFA should be sold and processed locally at fair market value for the logs. So that's one thing. And the other thing is the CF Corp operates at arm's length from its two partners. Its two partners, the NRM and FNFN, provide the operating budget for the CFA. But, you know, we had an update session with the two partners yesterday to let them know where we've been over the last 9 to 10 months and where we think things are going. We in no way, shape, or form had any pressure to start harvesting or to make money. Or there was never any of that conversation in the update session with the partners. And they have full confidence in the CF Corp board of directors managing the corporation on their behalf in the best interests of the communities in the Fort Nelson area. So, you know, we're not going to rush into anything. As Lawrence said, we want to do this right. We want to live to the guiding principles that we set up for the corporation and for the CFA, and we'll learn things as we go. You know, this next 12 months is going to be different than the 12 months that we just went through, and things. My sense of it, things are going to continue to evolve in the forest sector in Fort Nelson over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, and we're going to have to keep our wits about us so that we can remain nimble and flexible to react to some of those changing conditions.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
So we have a question from Jeff Thompson, and he'd like to know if we are planning to utilize spring to allow coniferous to outgrow poplar and willows.
You want to take that on, Jim?
I believe the short answer is we don't want to see any aerial herbicide spraying inside the CFA. You know, that's not something that the Fort Nelson First Nation want to see, and we had discussions about that particular practice, and so we've incorporated a no aerial herbicide application for the CFA, and having, you know, we're hoping we can come up with management strategies that allow us to manage the conifer and the deciduous in the most appropriate way that's balanced with nature and balanced with the other users in the land.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
it's Jeff Beal here. I'm a director with NRM as well with Lawrence. And it just so happens that I'm actually quite involved with some mixed wood research about reforestation and the ability of conifer to pop up through various levels of deciduous and shrubbery. And it's interesting. We're finding some pretty good results, and we're working hard to try and put forward some different ways of or different obligations for reforestation obligations that will not preclude, but although the community forest is precluded spraying, but it definitely can help manage through to get free growing in non-sprayed conditions.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Next question, if there is one.
There actually isn't any more questions.
Jeff, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell a little bit about yourself to the people out there?
Sure, I'm Jeff Beal. I'm a professional forester. I've lived and worked in the Peace for 25 years. I concurrently happen to be a director with the Little Prairie Community Forest. And many of you may have been at that session a couple of years ago. I gave a rendition of how we're managing things in the Chetwynd Community Forest. But my background is heavy on forestry, some in energy, oil and gas within Canada, and also with Slocan Forest Products. And correspondingly, I was heavily involved as woodlands manager, setting up the OSB plant in Fort St. John. And I worked quite a bit with the staff up in Fort Nelson. So I'm really happy to be involved with the community at this level, and appreciate your support for us. But willing to answer more forestry type questions as the time goes on at this meeting or others.
Thank you very much for that. Any more questions out there? No?
No, not unless anybody doesn't want to type and just open mic and ask.
Okay, well, I would say that that would be a wrap, I think. I would just like to make a couple comments here. I really appreciate everybody logging on tonight and being part of this Zoom call. We will be having more of these. We're gonna. I don't want to overspeak here, but I think we're going to do this at least twice a year. I think the more that we communicate and get ideas and listen to people, I think the better we become. We don't have all the answers. I just will be right up front about that. But what we do have is we have this willingness to make sure that whatever we do here, that we get it right. And it's for the community. And I mean all people of Fort Nelson. Because once the deal's done, it's done. And I know that there's this fear of logs rolling down the highway, and the benefit to that is very small. None of us want to see that happen. So we want to work with as much local demand as we can, and we will get through this, and we will adjust as we go, as time goes on. I do want you to know that in my view, and I can speak for the board, I think we are in good hands, and we will manage this the best we can. So I appreciate all your comments, and if we're downtown, myself and Catherine, we're always here. You can shoot us off an email. If you got a question, don't be scared to ask it, and we will get through this. So I welcome everybody, and I appreciate your comments. And there are better days ahead for sure. So thank you very much. And I think that's it. So take care, everybody, and we will talk to you later.
Thank
That's
you, Board.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.